The sky above Valera Ridge was painted in deep crimson, filled with heavy clouds that moved like wounded beasts. The wind screamed through the cliffs, carrying the cries of fear and betrayal. At the edge of the cliff stood a small alien girl, fragile, trembling, her silver hair whipping across her face. Her name was Liara, only 12 years old, born with marks on her skin that glowed faintly blue. The elders of her tribe called it the curse of light. They said she was born under a dying star, a sign of misfortune. Now those same people, who once smiled at her, stood in a circle, eyes cold, faces hidden behind hoods. "Throw her!" someone shouted. "Let the curse die with her." Liara shook her head. "Please, I didn't do anything." Her small hands were tied with metal cords. Tears rolled down her cheeks, shining against her pale skin, but mercy had no place on this cliff. Two guards grabbed her arms and pulled her forward. For a moment, her feet dangled over the edge. The sky cracked open with thunder as the storm began. Then, she fell. Her scream was lost to the wind as lightning tore across the horizon. She plunged through the darkness, crashing into branches, rocks, and water far below. Silence followed. The tribe above turned away, believing the curse was gone. But far beyond the cliffs, in the black sea of stars, a small human exploration ship detected a strange signal, a faint, repeating pulse. Inside the cockpit of the Star Reach, Commander Ethan Cole leaned forward. He was a rugged man in his 30s, eyes sharp but kind. He had been mapping uncharted sectors of the Orion Belt when his scanner beeped. Unidentified life sign detected. Location: surface of Valera Ridge. He frowned. That's a dead zone. Nobody lives there anymore. Still, something in that weak, flickering signal stirred him. It was irregular, like a heartbeat. He changed his course. "Hang tight, whoever you are," he muttered, steering the ship toward the storm-covered planet. When he landed, the rain hit like shards of ice. His boots sank into the mud as he moved through twisted trees and sharp rocks. The scanner led him toward the canyon base, and then he saw it. A small figure, half buried in wet leaves, glowing faintly under the stormlight. Ethan dropped to his knees. Hey, stay with me." He lifted the girl's head gently. Her pulse was weak, skin freezing. He pressed a button on his wrist, scanning her vitals. "She's still alive." The girl's eyelids fluttered. Her alien eyes, wide and glassy, focused on him. "You... human?" she whispered weakly. "Yes," he said softly. "And you're safe now." Her breathing slowed. "No. They'll come. They'll find me." "Not if I find them first," Ethan said, wrapping her in a thermal blanket. But before he could move her to safety, a sharp beam of light cut through the rain. A search drone. Then another. Voices echoed above the canyon. "They're here," Liara whispered. "The hunters." Ethan looked up. The cliffs glowed with red targeting beams sweeping the ground. He lifted the girl in his arms and ran. Behind him, plasma shots hit the rocks, sending sparks and smoke flying. He dashed into a cave, panting. The sound of drones grew louder, scanning the area. He pressed a finger to his lips. "Quiet," Liara nodded, trembling against his chest. The two sat in darkness, only the soft hum of her glowing skin lighting the cave walls. Outside, the alien voices grew distant. Ethan waited, barely breathing. When silence finally returned, he looked down at the girl again. Her eyes were closed, her small hands gripping his jacket. He exhaled. "What kind of world throws away its children?" he murmured. He took off his jacket and wrapped her tightly. For a moment, her shivering stopped. She opened her eyes again, whispering, "Why, help me. You don't even know me." Ethan gave a small, tired smile. "Because someone should have." She blinked slowly as if trying to understand those words. "You'll stay?" "For now," he said, leaning against the cave wall. "I'll get you off this planet. I promise." Her voice was fading, but she managed to say, "Promise?" "Promise." Outside, the rain eased. The clouds began to part, and through a narrow crack in the cave ceiling, starlight poured in. It reflected off her skin like tiny constellations, soft and beautiful. Ethan stared for a moment, realizing that this child, abandoned by her own kind, had a strange glow that seemed human in its sadness. He gently lifted her again and whispered, "Let's get you home, kid." As he carried her toward his ship, the wind howled behind them, almost like the mountain itself was warning him. Somewhere above, the tribe's patrols searched the cliffs, unaware that their curse still lived. And far beyond the storm, destiny began to stir. The man who saved a lost alien girl would one day face her again. Not as a victim, but as a queen. Ethan didn't know it yet, but this single promise, spoken in a dark cave, would change two worlds forever. The storm had finally ended when Ethan's ship, Starreach, lifted from the canyon floor. The engines hummed softly, pushing through layers of mist and thunderclouds until the stars appeared above them, clear, endless, and bright. Inside the small cockpit, the alien girl lay wrapped in a warm blanket, sleeping on a narrow bed beside the control panels. Her breathing was shallow, her silver hair tangled with dried rain. Ethan looked at her through the reflection on the glass and whispered, "You made it, kid. You're safe now." He set the autopilot and leaned back, his eyes heavy but alert. It wasn't his mission to save lives. He was a mapper, an explorer sent to chart unclaimed planets. But something about the girl reminded him of Earth's children, the way she clung to life despite everything. Hours passed. The hum of the ship became the sound of peace. Then suddenly a weak voice came from behind him. "Where am I?" Ethan turned. Liara was awake, her glowing eyes blinking under the cabin light. "You're on my ship," he said kindly. "We're heading to a safer place, somewhere far from those who hurt you." She tried to sit up but winced. "You should not have helped me. My people. They hate humans." Ethan gave a tired laugh. "Yeah, I noticed. Guess I'm not very good at listening to warnings." For a second, she just stared at him, confused by his calm tone. On her planet, humans were known as destroyers, the ones who once burned forests and mined stars until nothing lived. But this one, he didn't look like a monster. He looked sad. He poured her some warm liquid and handed it over. "Drink, it's called cocoa. Humans use it to feel better." She took a sip and coughed. "It's sweet." "That's the point," Ethan said with a small grin. "The universe is bitter enough." She didn't understand all his words, but she could feel their kindness. For the first time since the fall, her heartbeat slowed. Days passed aboard Starreach. Ethan taught Liara to walk around the ship, to speak simple Earth words, to read symbols on screens. In return, she hummed strange melodies from her world, songs that shimmered in the air like soft light. Sometimes she would look at the stars through the window and whisper, "They are so close, and yet so far." Ethan smiled. "That's space for you. It looks small until you try to cross it." Each day she learned more. Each night he told her stories about Earth, blue oceans, green trees, music in the streets. She listened quietly, eyes glowing like moons. But not everything was peaceful. One night, while Ethan repaired the engine, a faint light blinked on his radar, a tracking signal. He frowned. "No, that can't be." He checked again. The frequency was alien, starborn military. They had found her signal beacon, buried deep inside her cloak. It was transmitting her location. Ethan's pulse quickened. "They're coming." He turned toward her. She was sitting by the window, holding the edge of the blanket, unaware of the danger. "Liara," he said quickly, "did your people put any kind of device on you? Anything that glows, beeps, or feels hot?" She looked at him in confusion, then reached under her sleeve. A small crystal embedded in her wrist was blinking faintly blue. "This. I was born with it. It's part of me." Ethan stared. "No, that's not natural. That's a tracker." Before she could react, he pulled a medical tool from the wall and carefully deactivated the crystal's power. The blinking stopped, but it was too late. The radar lit up. Dozens of red dots appeared, closing in fast. Ships inbound, the computer warned. Starborn signature detected. Liara's voice trembled. They will take me. They always take me. Ethan knelt in front of her, holding her shoulders. No one's taking you again, you hear me? She looked at him, eyes wide. Why? Why risk your life for me? He hesitated. Because once, I couldn't save someone when it mattered. I won't fail again. He ran to the controls, pushing the ship into hyperspeed. The stars stretched into lines of light. But the enemy ships followed, fast, relentless. Inside the cockpit, alarms blared. Plasma fire burned through the shield. Liara covered her ears, crying. I'm sorry, I brought this. Ethan grabbed her hand. Don't ever say that, you didn't ask to be hunted. He made a sharp dive toward a nearby asteroid belt. The ship rattled, metal groaning, sparks flying. Chunks of glowing rock streaked past like fireballs. The enemy ship struggled to follow. Finally, after what felt like forever, silence returned. The radar was clear. Ethan exhaled, leaning back in his seat. We lost them. Liara was trembling. They will find us again. Not if you're somewhere they can't reach. He opened a small drawer and took out a glowing cube, a memory capsule. He stared at it for a long time. Liara, I can wipe their records from your mind. You'll forget me, forget all this. You'll be free. Her eyes filled with tears. Forget you? But you are my protector. It's the only way, he said softly. If they track your memories, they'll find me and kill you again. She shook her head weakly, but he pressed his hand gently on her forehead. Sleep, Liara, dream of peace. The device glowed softly, and her eyes slowly closed. Ethan whispered, voice heavy with sorrow, if destiny allows, we'll meet again. He carried her to a neutral colony, a safe, quiet place hidden among asteroid rings. He left her in care of kind strangers, leaving behind only a locket with her name. When he finally returned to his ship, the stars outside looked colder. 15 years later, those same stars would bring her back, no longer a lost child, but a queen who remembered a promise. 15 years had passed since the storm, the cave, and the promise. The universe had changed in those years, but Ethan Cole had not. He now lived far from war and stars, on a quiet desert colony named Orion's Edge. The colony was small, dusty streets, flickering neon signs, and slow sunsets that turned the sand into fire. Ethan owned a little workshop at the corner of a forgotten lane. The sign above the door read Starreach Repairs. He fixed broken engines, patched hulls, and traded stories with old pilots. He had scars now, both on his skin and in his heart. Some nights, when the twin moons rose high, he would step outside and look at the stars. One star, faint and blue, always caught his eyes. He didn't know why. Or maybe he did. It was the same star that had once shone through the cave ceiling, the night he made his promise. Inside his workshop, a small radio played soft static and news from distant systems. The galaxy was now ruled by the Starborn Empire, a powerful alien civilization once torn by civil war. Ethan didn't care for politics. He had seen enough of them in his youth, but one afternoon, while working on a damaged drone, the broadcast changed. Breaking news from the Central Worlds, Queen Liara of the Starborn Empire has ended the century-long conflict. She is called the Light of the Empire. Ethan froze. The name hit him like thunder. Liara. He slowly turned off the radio, heart pounding. No, it can't be, he whispered. She wouldn't. He wanted to believe it was just a coincidence. But somewhere deep inside, the old promise stirred again. That night, the wind howled across the desert. The sky darkened and a strange hum filled the air. Ethan stepped outside, his tool still in hand. At first he thought it was thunder, until the ground shook. He looked up. Out of the clouds descended massive ships, silver and gold, shining like falling stars. The air crackled with energy. The entire colony stopped. People ran out of their homes, pointing at the sky. The lead ship landed just beyond the dunes. It bore the crest of the Starborn Empire. 3 glowing rings intertwined around a single flame. Soldiers in gleaming armor poured out, forming ranks in perfect silence. Ethan felt his stomach tighten. He knew military formations when he saw one. A booming voice echoed from a loudspeaker. "By the decree of Her Highness, Queen Liara of the Starborn Empire, we seek the human known as Ethan Cole." The crowd gasped. Ethan took a step back, eyes wide. The words didn't make sense. How could a queen know his name? He slipped into the shadows, moving through the narrow alleys. His instincts from old wars came alive. But before he could escape the colony's edge, something bright blocked his path. A hovering drone. It scanned his face and spoke in a calm voice. "Ethan Cole. Identification confirmed. Her Majesty awaits you," he cursed softly. So she really exists. Before he could react, a soft sound came from above. A low hum like the beating of wings. A transport craft landed nearby, its doors sliding open. From inside stepped a tall figure wrapped in royal cloth and silver armor. The crowd fell silent. The air shimmered with tension. Ethan's eyes met hers. It was her. The same eyes that once glowed faintly in the cave now blazed like twin suns. Her hair, once tangled and wild, now flowed like silver silk. Her face was calm, regal, and heartbreakingly familiar. For a long time, neither spoke. The world seemed to hold its breath. Then Liara smiled, softly, sadly. "You kept your promise." Ethan felt the years collapse inside him. "You remember." "I remember everything," she said. "The cave. The storm. The man who carried me through the dark." He shook his head. "I erased your memories." "You shouldn't." "I fought to get them back," she interrupted. "When I became queen, I searched every forgotten world until I found traces of your ship, Starreach. I owed you more than life." The soldiers behind her shifted uneasily. One whispered, "Your Majesty, the human is not worthy of your presence." Liara's gaze turned cold. "Then the Empire is not worthy of me." The soldier fell silent. Ethan lowered his head, unsure what to say. Why come here after all this time?" She took a step forward. "Because I wanted to see the man who showed me kindness when my own people threw me away." He laughed quietly, but there was no joy in it. "You shouldn't have. I'm just a mechanic now, Liara. The galaxy doesn't need me." Her expression softened. "The galaxy doesn't need heroes. It needs hearts." A hush fell over the crowd. Even the wind seemed to stop. Ethan swallowed hard. "If your people find out what you're doing, They already know," she said calmly. "And they will learn that a human's compassion rebuilt their queen." The word spread through the crowd like fire. Murmurs turned to awe. Some of the colonists even bowed, not to the queen, but to Ethan. He looked at her again, still stunned. "You've become something great, Liara. You don't need me anymore." Her smile faded. "Maybe not. But I wanted to thank you. Before the council forbids me from ever seeing you again." A royal guard approached, bowing. "Your Majesty, the council summons you. The fleet must depart." Liara turned to Ethan, her eyes shining. "This isn't goodbye. I will return." Before he could answer, she reached out, pressed something small into his hand. A silver pendant shaped like the star that had once guided them. "Keep it," she whispered. "It will light the path when I cannot." Then she stepped back into her ship. The engines roared, sand swirling around her like gold dust. Ethan stood there long after the ships vanished, the pendant glowing faintly in his palm. He looked up at the night sky again, at that same blue star, and whispered, "You found your crown, kid. But you still kept your promise." He didn't know it yet, but this was not the end. It was only the calm before the storm. The moment before the Empire turned its gaze on the human who once defied their law. 3 weeks had passed since the royal fleet vanished from Orion's edge. But for Ethan Cole, those 3 weeks felt like 3 lifetimes. Every night, he replayed that moment, the sight of Liara standing before him in armor that shimmered like moonlight, calling him by name after 15 long years. He could still hear her voice, soft yet firm. "You kept your promise." Now her pendant sat on his workbench, glowing faintly blue, the same color as her eyes. It pulsed slowly, as if alive, like it carried her heartbeat. Sometimes he caught himself staring at it for hours, lost in thought. But deep down, he knew peace never lasted long in this universe. One silent evening, as he worked on a broken engine, a strange vibration filled the air. Low, rhythmic, familiar. He froze, looking up. Outside, the sky turned gold again. A single royal shuttle descended quietly beyond the dunes. No escort ships. No soldiers. Just one craft, sleek and shining, landing in the sand with elegance. Ethan's heart pounded. No way. He stepped out of his workshop, shielding his eyes from the light as the shuttle's doors opened. The ramp lowered, and from the mist stepped Queen Liara, cloaked in white, her crown faintly glowing. She wasn't surrounded by guards this time. Only silence. The desert wind brushed against her long silver hair as she walked toward him. Ethan couldn't move. "You came back." Her lips curved into a soft smile. "Didn't I promise I would?" He almost laughed. "You're a queen. Don't you have empires to run?" "I left them for one night," she said simply. "They will survive without me." For a moment, time seemed to stop. The two stood facing each other, surrounded by nothing but wind and stars. Finally, Ethan spoke. "You shouldn't have come here alone. It's dangerous. Your council will—" "They already hate me," Liara interrupted, her voice calm but sharp. "They say I'm weak because I honor a human. But I don't care. You saved me when no one else did. That is my truth." Ethan sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. "You're going to get yourself dethroned one of these days." She stepped closer, her eyes steady. "Then let it be for something worth losing." He looked away, pretending to check the engine beside him, but his voice was softer now. "You've changed, Liara," she smiled sadly. "You taught me how." Later that night, they sat on the roof of his workshop. The desert stretched endlessly before them, painted silver by twin moons. Liara removed her crown, setting it beside her like a weight she no longer wanted to carry. "I used to dream of this sky," she said quietly, "when I was a child before they threw me from the cliff. I imagined freedom looked like this, open, endless, quiet." Ethan nodded. "Freedom always looks simple from far away. Up close it's complicated." She tilted her head. "You sound like someone who has lost it before." He smiled without humor. "Maybe I did. A long time ago." For a while they said nothing. The wind whispered between them, carrying the faint hum of his workshop generator. Finally, Liara spoke again. "Ethan, do you ever regret saving me?" He turned sharply. "What kind of question is that?" "An honest one," she said. "Because my people call you a threat now. Because my name has started wars in the council. Because your kindness changed me and they hate that change." Ethan stared at her, jaw tight. "Then they're blind. You became their queen because you learned compassion. That's not weakness." She looked down, fingers brushing the metal edge of her crown. "They want to replace me with a general. They say I've forgotten who I am. And have you?" He asked softly. Her eyes met his. "No, I remember everything. Especially the night you said, 'Someone should have helped.' Those words never left me." Ethan felt something twist inside his chest. An ache, deep and real. "I meant it. I know," she whispered. The silence that followed was heavy, filled with things neither could say. Then suddenly, a faint red light blinked on her wrist communicator. She frowned. "No." "What is it?" She tapped the device. "A distress signal from my palace. The council, they've called a vote. They plan to remove me tonight." Ethan stood up instantly. "Then go. You can't lose your throne because you came here." But she shook her head. "I can't leave you unprotected. If they know I came here, they will send assassins." He grinned faintly. "Let them come. I'm old, not helpless." Liara's voice grew firm. "No, you saved me once. This time I protect you." Before he could argue, the sound of distant engines filled the air. The night sky lit up with red lights, small crafts approaching fast. Ethan grabbed his plasma rifle from inside. Too late. "They're already here." Liara activated a shimmering force shield around them. "They're not here to arrest. They're here to silence." The first explosion hit the sand near his workshop, sending a wave of dust and fire into the sky. Ethan shielded her, shouting over the noise, "Get back to your ship." "I'm not leaving you again," she cried. A second blast threw debris everywhere. Ethan aimed his rifle, firing at the attackers, dark figures in elite armor. His aim was sharp, precise. Two fell, but one aimed straight for Liara. Without thinking, Ethan jumped in front of her. The plasma bolt hit his shoulder, burning through the fabric. He groaned, falling to one knee. Liara screamed his name and raised her hand. A surge of blinding light burst from her body, pushing the assassins away in a wave of pure energy. When it cleared, the attackers lay unconscious. She knelt beside him, hands trembling. You fool. Why would you do that? He grinned weakly. Because someone should have. Tears filled her eyes as she pressed her hand over his wound. You can't leave me again, Ethan, not now. He looked up at her through the haze of pain and whispered, Then don't let them take you. Rule your world, Liara. Make it better than the one that threw you away. She held his hand tightly, her voice breaking. I'll make them remember your name. He smiled faintly. Just remember the promise. I never forgot, she said. And for the first time in years, the Queen's voice cracked, not with fear, but with love. The halls of the Starborn Palace were made of crystal and light. Every wall shimmered with floating symbols, and every corridor whispered with the voices of power. But on this day, the light felt cold, unwelcoming. Queen Liara walked down the grand corridor, her cloak torn and dusted with sand. She had returned from Orion's Edge with Ethan Cole, the human who had once saved her life, now wounded and unconscious. His body lay inside a stasis pod beside her, glowing softly as royal healers floated him toward the medbay. Every step she took echoed like thunder. The royal guards bowed low, but none dared speak. They had all seen the broadcast, images of the Queen fighting beside a human defying the old laws. As the doors to the council chamber opened, a wave of angry voices hit her. Blasphemy. The Queen has lost her mind. She risks everything for a creature of war. Liara stepped forward, her head held high. Silence, she commanded, her voice steady but sharp. The room fell quiet. The Council of 9 elders watched her from their thrones, their golden eyes filled with judgment. At the center sat High Chancellor Varex, a stern alien with scales of obsidian and a voice like iron. He leaned forward. Your Majesty, your compassion is becoming a disease. You left the Empire without command, fought your own guards, and brought a human into our sacred halls. Explain yourself. Liara met his gaze without fear. I brought the man who once saved your Queen's life. You call him human. I call him protector. A murmur rippled through the room. Varex slammed his hand against the table. You break the law, Liara. Starborn Code 47 forbids humans from entering the palace, let alone touching royal blood. She raised her chin. Then change the law, the chamber gasped. Change it? Varex hissed. You insult the ancestors who died fighting human greed. Liara's eyes hardened. Our ancestors also threw me from a cliff because they feared what they didn't understand. Were they right too? For a brief moment, no one spoke. Her words cut through the air like a blade. Another elder rose, her voice trembling with fury. You speak of compassion, yet this creature brings war. The humans once burned our moons, and they also rebuilt them, Liara replied calmly. If we only see their sins, we will never see their hearts. Varex leaned back, eyes cold. The people have lost faith in you. They want strength, not softness. They want vengeance, not mercy. Liara walked toward the center of the chamber. Vengeance is easy, she said. Anyone can destroy. But to forgive, to see light in darkness, that takes strength. Ethan taught me that. At his name, Varex's expression turned to disgust. You speak his name like a sacred prayer. He is human. Liara smiled faintly. And yet he bled for a queen who wasn't his own kind. Tell me, Chancellor, how many of you would do the same for me? Silence. For a heartbeat, the council faltered. But then Varex stood. Enough, guards. 2 armored soldiers stepped forward. By decree of the council, Varex declared, the human Ethan Cole is to be imprisoned. His presence threatens the Empire's order. Liara's heart froze. You dare. He will be treated as an enemy until his motives are proven. You cannot let one man's kindness blind you to humanity's cruelty. Liara's voice shook, not with fear but with rage. If you imprison him, you imprison my soul with him. Varex sneered. Then perhaps you should join him. The guards moved toward Ethan's stasis pod. Liara's energy flared. A radiant blue aura filled the hall, shaking the crystal walls. Touch him, she warned, and you'll face the wrath of your queen. But the council was prepared. They activated energy barriers that surrounded her. She tried to fight through, but the chamber's suppression field weakened her powers. Ethan's pod floated away, down the corridor, toward the lower cells. Liara dropped to her knees, shouting his name. Ethan! He didn't hear her. He was deep in stasis sleep, unaware that he was now a prisoner in the same palace he had once inspired her to rebuild. Days passed. The palace grew quiet and cold. The people whispered rumors, some calling Liara a traitor, others calling her a saint. Every night she visited the tower balcony, staring toward the horizon where Earth's light could sometimes be seen faintly among the stars. In the dungeons below, Ethan began to wake. His body hurt, but his mind was clear. He remembered flashes of the battle, Liara's face, and the blinding light that had saved them both. A guard stood outside his cell. "You're lucky she still calls you friend," the alien said. "Without her, you'd be vapor." Ethan smiled weakly. "You think prison's enough to scare me?" You should have seen her counsel. That night, Liara came to see him in secret. Cloaked and silent, she slipped past the guards and deactivated the cell shield. He looked up, surprised. "You're supposed to be on your throne," she shook her head. "My throne means nothing if you're behind bars." "You shouldn't be here," he whispered. "They'll take you down for this." "I know," she said softly. "But I can't let them chain the one who freed me from my own chains." He studied her face. There were dark circles under her eyes. Her voice trembled slightly, not from fear, but from exhaustion. "You've changed," he said. "You sound more human every day." She smiled faintly. "And you sound more royal." They stood in silence for a long moment, separated by an invisible wall of duty and love. Then Liara whispered, "I will end this. I will show them who you truly are." "How?" "By making the truth impossible to deny." She turned and left before he could ask what she meant. The next morning, the Queen's command shocked the galaxy. She summoned the entire empire to the Great Plaza for a declaration. As the sun rose, her voice echoed across every world. 15 years ago, a human saved my life when my own people tried to end it. He gave me a reason to believe in compassion. If that is treason, then I am guilty." The crowd erupted in gasps and whispers. Across millions of screens, her words spread like wildfire. And in the cell below, Ethan closed his eyes, whispering with a faint smile, "You're going to start a war, kid." But deep inside, he knew it wouldn't be a war of hate. It would be a war for hearts. The broadcast of Queen Liara's declaration spread like fire through the galaxy. Every world of the Starborn Empire, from the silver towers of Serath Prime to the floating markets of Vorn, replayed her words again and again. "If compassion is treason, then I choose treason." Those words struck deep. Some wept, some cheered. Others shouted for her arrest. But across the stars something began to move, an awakening. In the heart of the palace, silence ruled. The great council chamber, once bright and echoing with power, now felt heavy, as if the air itself feared to move. High Chancellor Varex stood before a wall-sized screen showing the Queen's face. Her eyes glowed like stars, her expression calm and defiant. "She dares challenge the council in front of the galaxy," Varex hissed. "Because of her, humans now believe they are equals." Another elder growled. "Her kindness has poisoned her rule. She must be removed." Varex's claws tapped against the table. "Yes, but we will not make her a martyr. We will destroy her faith first." He turned to his advisors. "Send out the message. Ethan Cole, the human, will be executed for manipulating the Queen. We will call it justice." In the lower levels of the palace, Ethan woke to the sound of shouting. Guards were rushing past his cell, their steps echoing like thunder. "What now?" he muttered. The door opened suddenly, and Captain Rin, one of Liara's personal guards, entered. He looked nervous. "Human, the council has ordered your public execution." Ethan stood unfazed. "Can't say I'm surprised," Rin hesitated. "The Queen, she's planning something. She told me to say this. Hold your courage. The promise is not broken." Ethan smirked faintly. "That sounds like her." Moments later, the guards arrived and chained him. The crowd outside was already forming. Thousands gathered in the plaza, drawn by the rumor of a human's death. The plaza of the Starborn capital was massive, carved from crystal and stone, glowing under the twin suns. At the center stood a raised platform surrounded by soldiers. Ethan was brought forward, his hands bound, his face calm despite the roars and insults from the crowd. "Monster!" someone shouted. "Human disease!" cried another. He ignored them all. He had seen worse. Then, the royal horns sounded. The Queen entered. Her silver armor gleamed under the sunlight, but her face was pale. She stood tall, though her heart was breaking. As she stepped onto the platform, the soldiers bowed in confusion. "Your Majesty," said Varex from the council balcony, "this is a matter of justice. You cannot interfere, Liara looked up at him. You call this justice? Killing a man because he showed kindness? Varrix's eyes narrowed. He corrupted you, twisted your heart. You are no longer fit to rule, the crowd gasped, murmuring. Liara raised her voice. Then listen to my truth before you decide my fate. Her voice echoed across the plaza, carried by thousands of transmitters. 15 years ago, I was a child thrown from a cliff by my own people. I fell into darkness and a human saved me. He carried me through storms. He gave me food, warmth, and hope. And when danger came, he risked his life to protect me again. That is not corruption. That is honor. The crowd grew quiet. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. Liara turned to face Ethan. He did not change me into something weak. He reminded me that mercy can be stronger than fear. Ethan met her eyes and smiled faintly. You always talk too much, he whispered, though only she could hear it. A flash of emotion crossed her face. Half a laugh, half a tear. Then Varrix shouted, Enough! Guards, seize the queen. Protect the Empire from her lies. Soldiers hesitated. No one moved. They looked between the Chancellor and their queen. Liara spread her arms wide. If my words are lies, then strike me down. But if they are truth, then ask yourselves, why does your heart hesitate? The silence broke, first with a whisper, then with a shout. A young soldier stepped forward, dropping his weapon. The queen speaks truth. Another followed. Then another. Soon half the plaza bowed before her. Varrix roared in anger, pulling a concealed weapon. Then I will do what you cannot. He aimed at Ethan. Before anyone could react, Liara moved faster than light. She threw herself between the blast and Ethan. The plasma bolt hit her armor, shattering it, sending her crashing to the ground. Liara! Ethan cried, catching her before she fell. Her breathing was shallow, her glow fading. I told you. This time I protect you. Varrix shouted orders, but chaos erupted. The crowd turned against him. Soldiers loyal to Liara fought back. The plaza filled with light and fire. Ethan held her close, his voice trembling. Stay with me, kid. Don't you dare leave me now. She smiled faintly, blood glimmering silver on her lips. You kept your promise. No, he said, voice breaking. I'm keeping it still. He looked up at the soldiers fighting above, rage burning in his eyes. With one hand, he pulled her fallen scepter from the ground. Its core pulsed with pure energy. Enough, he shouted. The scepter responded, glowing brighter, reacting to his human touch. The explosion of light stopped everyone. Council, guards, rebels, citizens. The beam shot skyward, forming a great symbol above the palace. Two intertwined stars, one human, one alien. It became the mark of unity. Varrix fell to his knees, blinded by the light. What have you done? Ethan turned, carrying Liara in his arms. Something you'll never understand. He walked through the smoke past the stunned crowd toward the medbay. Behind him, the Empire trembled, not from war, but from awakening. Hours later, in the healing chamber, Liara stirred weakly. Her eyes opened to see Ethan beside her, bandaged, exhausted, but smiling. The Empire, she whispered. Still standing, he said. But different now. They saw you bleed for a human. They'll never forget that, she reached for his hand. Then maybe they'll finally learn. He squeezed her fingers gently. They already started. Outside the palace, thousands of lights filled the night sky, not warships, but ships of peace. For the first time in Starborn history, humans and aliens gathered not as enemies but as equals, and among them, legends whispered of the human who defied an empire, and the queen who loved him for it. The war that never began was over. For the first time in centuries, the Starborn Empire stood silent, not in fear but in awe. The uprising that had begun in blood ended in light. The image of Queen Liara shielding a human with her own body had become a symbol across the stars. And yet, peace did not come easily. Even after the Council's fall, the old voices of hate whispered in the dark corners of the Empire. There were still those who could not accept a world where human and Starborn stood side by side. But Liara and Ethan Cole had already rewritten destiny once. They would do it again if they had to. The sun rose over the silver spires of Sereth Prime, painting the skies gold. Ethan stood on the palace balcony, wearing a simple uniform, not royal, not military, just his old earth jacket repaired with care. His left arm was wrapped in bandages. His shoulder still burned from the battle's scar. Below him, thousands of alien and human engineers worked together, rebuilding the plaza destroyed during the revolt. The sight filled him with a strange warmth. Footsteps echoed softly behind him. "You still look at the city like you don't believe it's real," Liara said gently. He turned. She stood in the doorway, dressed in white robes that shimmered faintly with blue light. Her crown was gone. She no longer needed it. "I keep expecting to wake up," Ethan admitted, "to find myself back in my workshop on Orion's edge. Everything quiet again. No queens, no councils, no rebellions," Liara smiled. "And would you want that?" He looked at her for a long moment. "I thought I did. But then I'd have to live without you." Her smile faded into something softer. "You would have lived. But I would have never truly lived without you." The words hung between them, quiet and heavy with meaning. They walked to the edge of the balcony side by side, watching the people below. Children of both races played in the streets, chasing mechanical birds that shimmered in the sunlight. "Do you see them?" Liara said, eyes glowing faintly. "No one told them to stop. No one taught them to hate. They just learned to play together." Ethan nodded. "It starts small. Everything does," she said softly. "Even hope, but peace was fragile." In the depths of the galaxy, broken fragments of the old council regrouped under a single name: the Purity Legion. They sent messages through the black market channels, whispers of revenge. And one night a coded warning reached the palace. Ethan read the report aloud. "Threat level high. Possible assassination attempt within 7 rotations." Liara frowned. "They would dare attack now after everything?" "They've lost their power," Ethan said. "But desperation makes people dangerous." She looked at him. "You sound like you've seen this before." He gave a small, bitter laugh. "On Earth, peace never lasted long. It's always the same story. Someone's always afraid of losing control." Liara's expression softened. "Then maybe this time we write a different ending." That night the palace was quiet. Too quiet. Liara and Ethan stood together in the garden, a place of living light where flowers glowed like stars. The air smelled of rain and crystal dust. "I used to come here when I was little," she said. "Before everything. My mother told me the stars listen to those who speak truthfully." Ethan looked up. "You think they're listening now?" "I think they always were." He smiled faintly. "Then maybe I should tell them something honest." She turned to him, curious. "What is it?" He hesitated. Then quietly he said, "I never stopped thinking about that cave. The first night we met. You were scared, half dead, and I didn't know what to do. But something told me I couldn't walk away." Liara stepped closer. "You didn't just save me, Ethan. You changed the path of my whole world." "And you changed mine," he said softly. "I just didn't know it until now." For a moment, they stood face to face, close enough to feel each other's breath, close enough to hear the heartbeat that bridged 2 worlds. But then, from the darkness beyond the garden, a sharp sound split the silence. A shimmer, like a cloaked shadow moving fast. Ethan reacted instantly, pulling her down as a plasma bolt tore through the air where her head had been. The blast hit the crystal wall, shattering it into glowing shards. Guards rushed in, but another shot followed, aimed straight at Liara. Ethan didn't think. He moved, the bolt struck his chest. Liara screamed as he fell to the ground, the scent of smoke and blood thick in the air. She caught him before he hit the floor, her hands shaking. "No, no, no," she whispered. "Stay with me." His breathing was rough, shallow. "Guess I'm still bad at staying out of trouble," he joked weakly. "Don't," she cried. "Don't talk like that." He smiled faintly, the same gentle smile he had given her the day they met. "You kept your promise, Liara. You saved your people." Tears fell down her cheeks, glowing as they touched his skin. "And you saved me again." His eyes flickered. "That's what humans do. We're stubborn like that." "Ethan, please." He reached up with trembling fingers, brushing a strand of her silver hair aside. "Hey, look at me." She met his gaze, her whole body trembling. "You remember the cave?" He whispered. "I told you I'd get you home." "I remember," she said, voice breaking. "Well," his smile deepened. "Now it's your turn to bring me home." Then his hand fell limp. Liara's scream echoed through the palace, pure and shattering. Light burst from her body, spiraling into the night sky, illuminating every corner of the capital. Days later, when the Empire mourned the fallen human, the people saw a new symbol carved across the palace gates. two stars intertwined forever, their light never fading. Liara stood before it each dawn, whispering the same words to the wind. He gave me life once. Now I will give his meaning to all. And so, peace was written not by treaties or weapons, but by a promise, a human's promise that kindness could conquer even the stars. Years passed, and legends spread through the galaxy. They said that when the night was quiet, a faint blue glow still appeared in the desert skies of Orion's edge. Some swore they saw two figures walking together beneath the starlight, one human, one star-born queen, together still, bound by the eternal promise.